there was a time when the legislature enacted the transport of marijuana law. Like the MMA said, you can possess X amount, and it doesn't have what condition is not how you're carrying it in your car. And the legislature, without amending the MMA, created another law. Oakland County did not enforce that, oddly. I mean, under certain, it was a clear interpretation, it was later overturned as a invalid. But the interpretation, and Pam has been proffering an interpretation of the MRTMA, or the recreational law, as follows: if you are outside of the limitations of an adult over the age of 21, and there is not a specified penalty articulated within that law, section 14 and 15 and 4 and 5, I think are the ones that cover it, then you default back to the public health code. So if, for example, there is not a specifically articulated penalty associated with the behavior, like smoking in public, it says you can't smoke in public, right? So it doesn't say if you smoke in public, it's a fine or a it doesn't say anything. So the interpretation of this by Pam has been, well, since there's no penalty, it doesn't articulate it, you default back to the public health code, which is, unfortunately, the way they interpreted the MMA. Like, it's immunity, and if it doesn't tell you what's wrong when you're outside of immunity, you default back to, you're back. What do you mean? I had a card. Nope, you're drug dealer. It was that kind of flip flop. So that is one particular area. Like of course, someone would have to bring a ticket or a complaint, and the prosecutor's office would sign it. But to give people a little bit of notice, those areas, for example, there's the possessing marijuana. Smoking in public. There is there's a number of different issues that come up regarding people under the age of 21, right? The laws for adults over the age of 21, and these protections, you're not prohibited, it's legal. But under 21, game on. All the same laws would apply, would be an argument and interpretation. I've heard other prosecutors. What is your thoughts on that? Just from the outset. I mean, if it's not articulated within the statutes of penalty, how should we be interpreting that for that behavior?
Well, without really getting into the weeds in a technical basis, I guess the way I would interpret it is I will always opt towards the most reasonable position. And when I say reasonable, I mean avoiding criminalizing somebody who's using marijuana. Again, I think it should be regulated, but I don't think we really need to shift from this idea that as a prosecutor, your role is to seek the absolute highest charge you possibly can, to choose the charge that carries the most punishment behind it, and whether it makes sense or not. So I don't know technically how would I interpret that, but what I do know is we're going to be reasonable about it, and we don't want people to have felonies. We don't want. I'm going to avoid charging people who I do not believe are engaged in criminal behavior, whether or not the law allows me to do that or not, because I believe that's what being smart on crime is all about. And why to be wasting all of this time and money and effort within the prosecutor's office, within the judicial system, or the criminal justice system, on activities that shouldn't be criminal, So I guess that's the way I would answer that. Like, I don't want more people to be convicted of felonies. I mean, it just makes no sense to me. Again, want to keep our streets safe, want to protect the public, but this is not about protecting the public. How is interpreting the law in a way that would allow you to charge somebody with a serious felony or even a high misdemeanor? How is that protecting the law, the people of our community? If it's a marijuana charge, how's that protecting somebody?
Do you think that those cases that were charged that may still be going on? I have a couple of, do you think that the recreational law applies backwards, retroactively to marijuana cases that have not been disposed of yet?
Yes. And I also think people who have marijuana convictions on their record, that those should be expunged. I mean, it's just fair. I mean, why wouldn't somebody who has a possession of marijuana case and a conviction on their record that prevents them from doing something they really want to do, usually a job, by the way, why wouldn't we allow that conviction to be expunged? Again, It just makes sense to me. It just makes sense.
And are you saying that from a policy or interpretation of the law that it does have a retroactive effect on not to undo a conviction? I mean, I understand that's a.
If you're asking me of cases that are currently going on, but they were charged before the law was in effect, I would immediately apply the new law. Like, I don't care. I mean, it just that's how powerful your prosecutor is. They can at any moment decide to dismiss that charge. And why wouldn't you, if just because the day on the calendar we said it was illegal, but now we don't, and you're still going to spend efforts and resources and time and money prosecuting that? Does that make sense to you? I don't think that makes sense.
I agree.
I'd rather focus my attention on trying to, keep child sexual assault. I mean, domestic violence or, armed robbery. I mean, there are things that we really should be spending some time on. Treatment courts, so that we don't have this repeat offender constantly. I mean, there's so many more things that are just more important.
People that are growing marijuana as an adult recreation, allowed to have 12 plants, got to be in a closed lock facility. Do you think that they should have to relinquish their Second Amendment right to protect their home and house and not have a gun in the house? Do you think that, these are questions as a lawyer I get asked all the time. I'm a patient or caregiver. Now it's legal to have to get rid of my gun. Is this an issue that you see?
Well, I mean, do they have that? I mean, we don't. It's just. Do we have a law that prevents people from having alcohol in their home? As a judge, I saw so many cases where people legally possessed a weapon, but because of alcohol, used it in a way that victimized people.
Sure.
But I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. Look, we allow people to legally own guns. That is not something I have ever chosen to do. Though I grew up in a household where my dad was and still is a big hunter, so there were guns in our home. But if you're following the law, I don't see how it relates. So again, I go back to what makes sense. Just because the charge of it is available for you to make does not mean it's the right thing to do. Because once you charge somebody with several offenses, you're really setting them down a path that you can't unwind. And by the way, they don't want to unwind because they won't even dismiss or amend the charge. So, no, I don't.
David's itching to get on. I'm gonna turn his mute button up. I just want to make a couple of comments because he's going to try to take over. But you mentioned a couple of things that I thought were really important. I want to say this: that Jessica Cooper has disappointed every lawyer, from my view, that she got to support her when she got elected. She did nothing to have any empathy or sense of compassion to the people that she brought into the criminal justice and all the programs, as you mentioned, that allow for first-time offender things. Not happening. You got to get double secret permission from some chain of custody that you can't even walk up. Very, very difficult. Most lawyers of first offense, they know they're probably going to get it impaired when they walk into court. Not in Oakland County. You got to beg and grovel for that, if that's even a thing. And that's just non-marijuana cases. And it's quite distressing that not only did she end those programs, but she misled a lot of people into thinking that she was going to champion those things. And I would also agree with you that one of the things missing, and I see it and hear it all the time, that the people that are brought into the system are damaged. Like, I don't think anyone grows up and says, I want to be a criminal. It's a matter of circumstance, economics, education, culture, lifestyle, all the things that they're born into. And they may not have the skills to survive in normal circumstance they find themselves. Now, I'm not saying I'm defending the criminal activity, but I'm saying the way you deal with it for the next round and how you get the improvement, break out of the cycle. Nothing in the court system provides that path. Very little, if any. And in the way we're dealing not yet. And the way we're dealing with a lot of these social issues, like, for example, I saw the sheriffs, their best argument why we shouldn't legalize marijuana was they do 5 home calls per day for mental health issues, and marijuana legalization is going to create more of those. My question was, why are police officers doing mental health calls at somebody's house? We are totally putting the money in the wrong spot. These are not public safety.
Exactly. And officers want tools. They want tools because they are doing those calls. I don't know what it has to do with marijuana, to be honest. In fact, I might even argue that
it doesn't make. I know it's the logic.
Yeah.
Listen, here's how
it makes no sense.
the prohibition of marijuana is based on a lie. So everything after that is going to be weird and not able to be explained, and that would be one of those. Okay. All right. Let's let David on. David wants to try to pin you down, I think, on your interpretation. Let's see what he's got to say. David, go ahead. I'm unmuting you. You got to behave, though. Okay.